Hi everyone, I am Cat Wolinski, Senior Editor of VinePair, and this is episode 4 of Tapping into Culture, a series brought to you by VinePair and Sixpoint. Today I'm here with Chris Sterbank from Sixpoint
Hello.
and with Laura Dierks from Interboro Spirits and Ale.
Hello.
And today we are talking about the digital world of beer. The digital world of beer, I think, is changing a lot. We're really talking about buying beer online, having beer delivered. There's just so many new avenues that this has taken since COVID. We're a year into the pandemic now, and we have so many wonderful ways of getting local beers and spirits to our homes. So, Laura, the reason that I asked you to come on for this episode is that I, early on in the pandemic, bought a bunch of beer from Interboro, also hand sanitizer, and I had a really good experience with the platform that you created, IRT, which is a play on the old subway system. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
For sure, for sure. So we stood up our Interboro Rapid Transit, or IRT, like calling back to the old subway system, uh, with the idea that we would be able to connect with customers that way. It was so difficult. We were all daunted by the idea of being shut down and being disconnected, that we wanted to make sure that, not only for our brand, but for us personally, that we stayed connected with all those people that had been great customers um, in the intervening few years that we had been in business prior. We had also, we're faced with the fact that we wanted to maintain all of our employees. And we had, on the flip side, we had a couple of drivers that had no restaurants to deliver kegs to anymore. So it seemed like a win-win. It seemed like a good way to keep our employees going and to keep our customers going and to keep us honestly going, sort of emotionally, right? To keep connecting with everybody that we were missing terribly. We didn't know how long we'd be missing them at the time, but we really, really wanted to stay in touch. And so we stood up IRT. We used, sort of our quickest, best methods at the time to just stand it up, use our Toast POS system, and expose it to the outside world and let people place orders directly with us and have us deliver them, on the truck as if we were delivering to restaurants. And it was a quick turnaround, but we got it going and got it there, and people were pretty happy with being able to get our product.
Yes, and you almost make it sound easy, like, oh, well, restaurants were closed, so we just had our staff start doing deliveries. But like, that's a huge change. That means like you're taking, a tap room manager or a bartender or a brewer, and like suddenly they're, helping out with packaging and deliveries, and that's a totally different job. So
Absolutely. And even the logistics of like, how do you make sure that somebody who ordered on a Tuesday, that when you go out on Thursday to deliver, that you haven't already sold that 4-pack to somebody else? We're not dealing with Bud Light, right? Like, that's not really how it works. So you have this, this double IPA and that single IPA and this sour and that sour, and that product mix and that complexity was pretty daunting. I mean, my head's not spinning now, but that's only because we're sitting here talking calmly right now. My head was spinning then. It's still kind of spinning. So hard to tell. Right. But yeah, it was very, very daunting. We actually stood up. We stood up all new shelving in our cold box and labeled regions, and started picking orders ahead of time so that we didn't lose track of somebody's order. We had lots of challenges and still have some lingering challenges with just the accounting of that, right? When somebody walks into the tap room and they hand you a $20 bill and they take that 4-pack and give them their change and they tip you the server, whatever it is, that's a very clear transaction. The trouble is somebody orders and then they decide 2 days later that they'd really like to change that. And they'd like to add a tip, or they're like, no, I don't want to do that at all. Now you've got this accounting that wasn't used to be clear. You just say at the end of the night, hey, you know, we took in $200. Please put $200 in the books. $200 is handed over to the bookkeeper. They put it in the bank, and it's done. But that accounting that is taking the orders ahead of time, maybe canceling them, maybe not, maybe changing them, maybe not. We basically had to stop all of what we were doing and be like, okay, we need to redo it all. And we put in lots of placeholders of like, just take the money we're handing you, put it in the bank. We'll figure it out later, you know, which is daunting unto itself, right?
Right.
Especially I'm a little OCD. So, you know, that was a little like, oh God, we didn't figure it out beforehand. And now what do we do? You know, but we figured it out. We figured it out. You had to.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about someone's job changing or their role changing, but you're talking about completely changing a business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And people were great. You know, we did have a lot of folks whose jobs changed overnight, you know, people who, you know, were doing like on-site retail management, tasting or management of a restaurant, now had to manage orders coming in. Like I'm talking, make sure you pull it aside, make sure you set it, you know, you have it organized. Takes a different kind of mindset. And we switched even physically the inside of the, you know, we stood up the exit through the gift shop right in the front, you know, and actually hung a banner down because we had, you know, we had to use the back of the room for stocking, you know, which then didn't look so great, you know, as people did walk in, you know, so.
Right.
And then forget about the whole hand sanitizer thing. We were standing up at the same time, but we managed that too. So.
There's just so much to talk about here.
So many pieces.
Chris a chance to speak before I just like ask you a million more questions.
I think, I mean, you nailed it, Laura. Like there's just, it's definitely, it's all precious cargo too. Like you said, it's not like we have 1,000, or some of them we do, obviously 1,000, but it's like every one of these beers, it's in its best interest to get to where it's being delivered, because there's a limited quantity in some cases of some of these. So we like all those logistical problems that could have, like if it didn't get sent out right, like redoing an order and all those things, like you don't think of those necessarily, but then there's this whole level of customer service that all of a sudden, like once you set this out there, like people are going to start to poke back at you to be like, what is this? How do I get this? And then all of a sudden, if you're not ready for that, there's just a wave of it over you, which is like, I think Sixpoint experiences that a little bit, and we try to be accommodating to all for sure, but it's kind of like a new skill, a new muscle to kind of start to flex, because it's like, you're right, in a retail scenario there's a kind of a different transaction happening there, and now that we're all kind of moving to this direct to consumer model, it's like, okay, well our customers they're right in front of us now, so we got to be able to give them what they need.
Right. And Sixpoint is different too a little bit in that you do have the tap room operating in Red Hook, but I would say primarily it's not a tap room based brand.
Right. Yeah, it's more so there's a kind of like beer garden hours that are kind of complementary to the actual like direct to consumer site, and it was another kind of one of those things where it's like, well, we got to sell this beer. How do we do it? And then you find the tools online. You're literally Googling like how to sell stuff. But there's a ton of tools out there that make it really easy and approachable, and I think with just like a little polish on those things that you can use, you can really offer like a great customer experience for sure.
Yeah. So for Interboro and IRT, that was on Toast, and then Chris, Sixpoint uses primarily Taproom, or
so we sell through Taproom, and then we also use our own platform via Shopify.
Oh yes, okay. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that with both of you as well. Like when we talk about buying beer online, or what we in the biz call direct to consumer or DTC, that can be so many things. It can be the online store, like you buy clothes, you know, or it can be the delivery apps like Drizzly. Then there's other types of third-party partnerships and relationships. Like there are, could one of you simply explain like the different types of direct-to-consumer models and
Sure.
to that? Like,
I can take that if you want, Kat.
yeah,
I,
please.
I can certainly take that. There are, these direct to consumer through, as Chris was saying, there's platforms that you can use yourself, like Shopify or even Toast, where it's just exposing the menu and exposing what you have, and you're doing all of it other than the technology part that's acting as the go-between. And then there are the platforms like that handle all the delivery and handle everything, like Caviar, Seamless, Grubhub. And then there's Taproom, where I'm guessing, Chris, that they did the same thing for you and I would say also people like Halftime Beverages as well, where they're actually taking the stock and they're like even more of a partner from a standpoint of where the product lives, right? So Taproom comes, they pick up a pallet of beer, and then you order through them, and they handle all of it as if they were another warehouse or another location for you. And that's what Taproom had does it for us as well. Halftime Beverage does that for us. And then we have those in betweens that are Caviar, Seamless, Grubhub, and missing one, DoorDash. And then Shop in NYC is another one that's just come up, and there's a handful of more other ones that where they're almost providing the platform for both for exposing the stock to the consumer and then also handling the delivery aspect of it. So taking that load as well.
So not only are you changing your business from a brewery or distillery to a delivery business, but now it's not just your own, online store. It's Toast, it's Drizzly, it's Caviar. You're managing like 4 or 5 different platforms. That's
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The IT department expands exponentially after a certain degree, or brewers and everyone. I feel like you mentioned it before, Laura. It's like it all of a sudden becomes all hands on deck. Everyone's kind of learning this stuff together to be like, all right, okay, this is how you print the labels. This is how you're putting on. Like it all of a sudden becomes a fly by night operation, and then you're a full online store.
Yeah, it's really. I think you've both done a really good job of both of your breweries have done a really good job of that. But I'm curious also about these. Is there one platform that shines for you? Like it's been the best to work with, or is there one that's best for the producers? One that's best for the consumers? Like, are they ever the same?
Chris, I don't know whether you have one. I haven't found one yet. I keep hoping to find one. I think that keep trying and keep working has been what's worked for us. Like you mentioned, Drizzly is sort of exposing the stock of multiple stores, right? So you can go on there as a consumer, and it doesn't matter where the stock is, you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to search Sixpoint, search Interboro, and maybe 3 stores around you have the product. And then, they have the availability from a retailer perspective of you finding them, right? Some of them like Toast or Shopify, where they're, people have to know about us already and be coming to us already. And then these other ones like Caviar and Seamless, they're, kind of catching you based on what you search for and that kind of thing. And maybe you find us because of that, or you're searching for our product and finding again in multiple places, but they're actually facilitating too, getting the product to you and all of that, either from us or even from another location. It just seems like we just need to keep trying and reaching people however they want to be reached.
Yeah, the tool sets, they're all out there. It's just, like you said, you just keep trying the different ones. I think for our perspective, it's always a lot of what's like the minimal transactional level you can have with the customer. So it's like, what's the least amount of steps for the customer to get your beer? And I think some systems do it better than others. But then there's always like Shopify, for example, has a library of plugins that, and it's not necessarily used to sell beer, but there's like plugins that can like send out alerts and text people and send out e-blast and stuff like that. So the more you dig into some of these tools, the more of these kind of things you find. I think Drizzly is an interesting kind of use case on the DTC idea too, because I feel like both the distributor side and the retail side are fans of Drizzly, because your Drizzly is buying from places that the distributors are selling to initially. So it's kind of staying within the same environment of the kind of the distributor brewery model. So I think they kind of run their own game there, which is good. And then again, all that level of customer service is put onto those platforms. So sometimes if you like know you're going to have a huge rush, it's like, all right, maybe we push Drizzly a little more this week or Taproom a little more this week because we know we won't be able to handle as many inquiries as that kind of thing. So it's just like a balancing act, really.
That's really interesting. So it's almost like replicating the way we buy beer in real life. Like Toast is you're going to the brewery, the tap room, like you want it to go straight directly there. And then something else, Drizzly is buying at, I guess, like a beer
Going to the grocery store sometimes. Yeah.
Or like, there's a difference between buying from the retailer versus the producer themselves as well.
For sure.
Yeah, we've certainly found that there are a number of fans, right? Folks who want to buy from us, who are very, very happy to be able to buy from us directly. And so that has been, in some ways, a shining light for us of knowing that we are connecting with people. So having that site up that people can buy directly from us, they're very happy to. And that's where, like, whether it be through our Toast platform, our website, through Caviar, Seamless, Grubhub, those things where they know they're buying directly from us. And even early on, we had people come down and call and say, I don't want to come in, but I'm outside. I drove down from Connecticut. I want to buy directly from you. I could buy from the store around my corner in Connecticut, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to come to you.
Oh my gosh.
And that was great, right? And that was great. And facilitating that of like, okay, the order's in, I see it here, I'll walk it out and put it in your truck. That made everybody happy. Mm-hmm. And so that, again, like kind of making sure that, you're sort of connecting with people and how they want to be connected has been the thing that we've seen to be the most successful. And, it's almost like there's those limited amount of steps and the overhead. There's overhead for every platform you stand up, everything you stand up, there's something, whether it be, my recent thing has been robocalls with the weather, where, Grubhub wants to make sure we're open and it's ringing my phone, saying, are you open, with a robocall? Like, please, can't do this. But being there to connect with people, however they're going to be able to find us, has been our winning solution.
Yeah, and I think a big question on a lot of consumers' minds, at least mine and plenty of fellow beer nerds, I'm sure, is do you plan to continue doing these direct to consumer or these e-commerce sales if and when things open up normally again?
I think it's really the future. I think it's we've had such a kind of limited sampling experience over the last year, and I think it's really important to like have that direct to consumer ability to kind of put in front of them exactly the fun, exciting stuff that you're doing in a way that would be sometimes even harder if it was in a smaller release setting. Like this is direct from the source, kind of all like the specialness of it. Like now it's egalitarian. Anyone with an internet connection can now get it. You don't have to be in a certain region or something. I mean, there's still like state and local laws and things like that apply that we have to adhere to, but it's definitely kind of, I think, changed the game for the better. I think it would be really hard to kind of go back from this, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
I'd say the same thing. We're definitely in the direct to consumer game for the long haul. So
So glad to hear that. Just to clarify for anyone who's not from New York, the reason I ask is because I have so much more access now to beers that I wouldn't ordinarily be able to get like that. You know, like I live in Lower Manhattan right now, and for the past couple of years, and it's just different. You know, I used to live in Greenpoint, like right on the border of East Williamsburg. I could walk to Interboro.
Right.
And now I rarely get over there, especially now. So being able to place these orders online and have it magically appear at my door has been life-changing. Actually, that's why I'm wearing this t-shirt. You can't really see it, but this is like direct-to-consumer pre-sales for me. It just happened.
That's a diagram of direct-to-consumer. That's great.
Yeah, we could print those as direct-to-consumer shirts.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, we should.
Yeah.
They're available in the VinePair store, I think. I bought it last year. Yeah, I mean, I think this has been such a boon, like despite it being, you know, rising from the ashes kind of like, a hard time, it's also forced a lot of small businesses to completely add on and adapt a new business model that I think ultimately in better circumstances will benefit us all.
Absolutely.
Definitely the silver lining, you know, the silver lining of finding and seeing that we still can connect, even though we're not able to be in the same place at the same time.
Yeah. I feel like early on there was kind of this rush to figure out how to kind of connect to consumers. So if everyone was kind of trying different things. We were doing like online, live online happy hours, and then things with the brewers and stuff. And that was all great, and I think people kind of enjoyed that. But I think ultimately people just wanted the beers in their hands, and this is kind of the solution. I think the silver lining here is that the kind of legislation and kind of the rules changed a little bit, that kind of started to open up these doors, and it's definitely rise from the ashes.
Or from like the malt dust.
Right. From the grain.
The cryo hops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, with that too, I mean, you're able to get people fresh beer faster too. Like it doesn't have to sit for a little bit. I mean, some of these things come right off our canning line and right into the shipping box, which is like that's the dream.
It really is. And there's actually been times when I have, you know, like you say, I checked the date code and it was that day or a day or two earlier. Even a week is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like still like condensation, like dewy in the canning line, like still wet from being cleaned off. I'm like, oh God,
yeah, right.
Fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
But
then shipping to the distributor and then getting onto the shelf somewhere, and then you getting it after, you know, several weeks of transit for sure.
Yeah,
very different.
It is different, and I think that's something that I always look out for when I'm out shopping in stores, in the grocery store, the beer store, you know, the corner deli, whatever it is. I tend to check, you know, the bottom of the can. I can't believe I don't have a beer next to me right now.
We're recording earlier. Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, what are we doing here?
But it's something that I look out for. Like, you know, the same way you look for a freshness date on food. I mean, it varies whether it's going to have a stamp of when it was made, which I actually prefer, or it's best to buy, which, you know, beer's never going to go bad or kill you, but the taste can change. I have found with certain delivery apps where they're basically going out and shopping for you at, you know, a deli, and then they're bringing it to you. I've gotten some pretty old beers, and, you know, I'm curious what your perspective is on like what shoppers should be looking for, or like how to do that better, because that's the only thing I haven't been able to translate is like I can check for that myself when I'm out shopping, but then with the delivery I'm like, oh man, this IPA is like 2 months old, which is fine. But like if I had gone straight to the brewery, it would be 2 weeks old.
Right.
The date code game uh, is a tough one. It's a tough one, especially it was tough before the pandemic, and it's been tougher in the pandemic when, depending on where you are and what, sort of what you have stood up as a brewery, whether it be self-distro or through a distributor, you're really dependent on being able to go out in the field, have partners in the stores who are looking at those things too and keeping things flowing, right? Monitoring the pull through, and knowing what dates, what dates to look at, whether it be an IPA or a lager, it matters, right? A lager is going to stand up on the shelf a lot longer than an IPA will, from a standpoint of the flavor that was intended in the beer, right? Like you say, it's not going to kill you, but it does change. Even cans of Coke change. You get an old can of Coke, it's not the same. But that's always been a tough thing to manage. And then in the pandemic, people's time was just really different. The distributors' time, people were furloughed, things changed. We switched to trying to get everybody on hand to pack things. Our salespeople, at times were, they didn't want to go out. They were turned away from places, like we couldn't go in. There was a line out the door waiting to go in to shop in places. You can't check the dates on stuff the way that we were. So it got harder. It got harder for sure. And then there were all the, like, just, it's like a freight train that's moving, and then all of a sudden somebody throws something on the tracks. So everything's running just fine.
Yep.
And then when you all of a sudden everything, something gums up those works, the distributors, slowed down pickups, and then things, got all mucked up, and it got harder. But that, the freshness to the consumer is super important. And it just has made it harder.
Yeah. For the record, this experience that I had was not with Interboro or with Sixpoint. Especially from whatever. But it's happened like with a couple different breweries. One of which I knew the beer so well that I knew this is not how it usually tastes, and then another that was from out of state, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this brewery distributed here before. This is amazing, and stupidly ordered a bunch of it, and then it was 7 months old, like 6+ months old, and they were IPA, and I was like, oh man, I'm really not getting a good sense of what this brewery's beer is like, because I'm not drinking it the way they'd be selling it normally.
Well, like the freight train thing, I mean, I think right at the beginning things went really haywire, because that flow of product was just upended. Beers that came in, I think that they had stuff, the distributors had things in their warehouses, and then their regular, sort of flow of things was just so disrupted that I think that beers went to places that they wouldn't have gone to regularly. Then the pull through wasn't monitored, and the customers didn't even know it was there, I think.
Right.
So we found our beer showing up in places that had never had our beer before, and then I went in and bought it off the shelf so somebody else could, because because I want it to be purchased. I mean, it was really kind of wild, and it was because people were furloughed, people were repurposed, and we just weren't expecting this kind of upheaval.
It's one of those things that when it works well, it seems like nothing's being done at all, because it just works in the background, and then once something like this kind of interrupts that, then all of a sudden then you start to see the seams a little more, for sure.
Right. And I mean, you're speaking from like what you said, Laura, that you're looking like at online at a shop or whatever. It's like you're speaking from an extremely conscientious craft brewery's point of view. Like what you're saying, for people that aren't familiar with like this process, is that people are actually personnel, like the employees of the brewery, are going into the hundreds of stores around the city that carry your beer and literally checking it on the shelf. Like that's
it's part of our sales. Yeah, it's part of our sales process. It's super important because protecting product quality, you know, the reality is, right, is that you as a consumer, now you're an educated consumer, but say that you're just an everyday beer drinker, you walk in, you buy a can of beer off the shelf, you maybe don't even look at the bottom of the can and are not aware of the fact that you could be looking at that and a 90-day-old, you know, IPA may not taste exactly how the brewer intended it to taste, especially when it's dry hopped and, you know, in the way that we do things. They taste the beer, that consumer tastes the beer. They don't know, right? They're going to say this beer is not great. And that brewery is not somebody I want to buy again, right? So in the end, protecting that customer experience and that product quality is all our job. You know, it has to be us, because no one will think, well, it's at the distributor's warehouse. The truck was delayed a week. It was delayed going to the consumer or to the retailer. The retailer ordered it but couldn't get it till the next week. And then it got put in the back and wasn't put on the shelf for a little while. And then it was in the back of the cold box behind some other things that they wanted to sell first. And then it finally gets to the front and that person grabs and buys that 4-pack. It always comes back to product quality and reflecting on us. So it's on us to protect that consumer experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you. And side note, I have brought this up with the VinePair staff editorial team. Like, we've talked through this because I get very animated about it. And the kind of like conclusion we come to is that I'm looking for these things. You know, I know to look at the bottom of the can. I know what a beer is supposed to taste like because I've had it before enough times. But a lot of times, I don't even think that people are necessarily drinking that 90-day-old IPA and thinking it's bad. I think they just think that's what it is, and it's like, that's what this tastes like. And you know, that's like something that's conceptually interesting to me, that we could all be recommending beers and tasting beers in different parts of the city or the country, even like tasting different things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what a lot of this kind of DTC approach also helps enable, that like sampling, because you can deliver upon the ideal beer to the consumer. Like, I think we didn't have that many options before, and now it's like it's right in front of us, and it takes a little bit to do it, but hopefully we can show everyone our ideal version of the beer now easier, which is always, I think, the goal.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I've been doing it for the last year. I'm ordering. My budget is bonkers. I'm like,
well, whether it be budget physically or, you know, financially, there's always a budget, right? You can't fit another 4-pack in the fridge.
exactly.
How many, you know, leftovers speak out? Does the juice really need to be in there? I don't know.
Real estate. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing.
Tomorrow morning, that beer will fit in there. You know,
when you're online, you're just like, oh yeah, sure, click.
All of these, and then
exactly. Like, is 12 enough? Okay. I think it will be.
That's a lot. Maybe I'll take. You know.
Yeah, I want to run out of this.
I'll have to curate, and then still when it arrives, I'm like shoving it into the
exactly. Yeah, you're taking them out of the things and hiding them, but next to the ketchup.
Or rearranging. You know, I think it's like this bottle on top of the egg. I think it'll be over.
Yeah,
that's the Tetris of the beer fridge.
That's good right there. We should use that. We're only limited by the size of your fridge. That's it.
Yeah, there you go. There's a T-shirt in that too.
There
Chris.
you go. There you go. There we go.
I think Chris O'Leary could provide us with some photos so that we can draw that up. What a full beer fridge looks like.
Right.
Well, I think that's a great place to end our discussion today. Thank you both so much for joining me to talk this through. I've been really curious myself about how the different platforms work, and you know, how to be a better shopper, you know, better at buying the beer, as well as helping to support the breweries that I love. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the rest of you watching, thanks, and be sure to tune in to our next episode in 2 weeks.